The Master of Horror, Clive Barker, is back with Jericho. Humanity is once again in peril as the firstborn, creatures that came before man, are looking to extinguish mankind and take its place. Should you go in, or hope the problem somehow sorts itself out? Jericho is best described as a team-based horror shooter, but it has a few interesting twists. The characters you control have both magic and projectile weapons at their disposal, and everyone has different equipment. Also, since you can switch between them on the fly not long into the game, you are given a staggering amount of options to take out your enemies. However, while everyone has a weapon or power for each hand, only certain members of the team can use both hands at the same time, which is a bit disappointing. Also, calling it a horror game in any way is a stretch, as the game isn't scary at all. Enemy types can be counted on one hand, and since they are typically slow or dumb or both, they come off as annoying rather than terrifying. Even the initially strong atmosphere fades away as environments, puzzles, enemies, and even boss encounters constantly repeat themselves. The game looks good and sounds good, but the predominantly brown environments don't do it any favors. What's most baffling, however, is that the experience feels excruciatingly repetitive, especially by the end, even though it lasts no more than 7 hours. The story itself is not particularly well told, interesting, or even coherent. Characters are either unlikable or forgettable, the use of time travel makes the plot hard to follow, and doesn't even provide any visual or gameplay variety. Also, since when did Christianity and magic mix? One bright spot is that your teammates' AI is actually quite good. They're competent at taking out most threats, even if they're nowhere near as accurate as you are. But they generally show greater self-preservation than you will, taking cover and even using their special abilities from time to time, though their tendency to forget about them occasionally is downright annoying. However, the game does a poor job of explaining itself, so don't be surprised if you either get lost or lose a boss encounter a few times, as some of the abilities the squad possesses are never even given a proper introduction. Other times, a text pop-up will tell you exactly what you need to do. Not being treated like a drooling dimwit or an all-knowing genius is something to appreciate, but Jericho's inconsistency in regard to telling you what to do is frustrating. The large levels might tempt you to explore, but the environments are downright empty, and besides, if you need supplies, one of your squad mates will always provide them. Jericho can best be described as inoffensive, but that's actually the game's biggest problem. It isn't bad enough to represent a lesson in how not to make a game, but it isn't good enough to really pull you in. The duality extends to both the story and the gameplay. As interesting as the plot may initially be, it's actually more of a mess that doesn't really go anywhere. And while the game does offer the player many ways to kick ass, the limited enemy variety leaves the game with little tactical depth. Ultimately, Jericho is the kind of game you play for a lack of something better to do and then move on.